But if anyone has any questions, feel free to sing out. But I think I'm just going to try and do some drawing and maybe talk about the comic art form and kind of demystify the art form a little bit, because comics, as popular as they are, and especially in light of all these like superhero films and comic books and whatnot, still a lot of people don't necessarily really understand the art form. And so maybe I can help kind of demystify it a little bit, give you a better understanding of the art form itself. Because to be honest, in terms of tangata moana artists doing comics at full time or even professionally, it's pretty slim pickings. And if you actually Google Sāmoan comic artist, it's pretty much just me for the first 2 pages of results, or most of pretty much. So finding myself in an art form, in an arts practice which is celebrated by the public, but also not very much practiced by our people, it can be a bit of a lonely journey. And so, I kind of appreciate people like, like organizations like Tautai, who are able to give me this kind of platform to be able to kind of share my work, share my process, and share the art form I absolutely have loved since I was a little kid. So let me just share some. I'll just share a screen. Yeah, so like when people think about comics, we go. Yep. So when people talk about comics and whatnot, in their mind they're thinking about superheroes and like big action sequences, right? Like it's all big blockbuster action and whatnot, and that's part and parcel of the process. And this is this artwork that I've done in for Headlocked and stuff. And so yes, there is action and spectacle and blunderbuss involved with drawing comics. Let's go. And and I absolutely love moments where I get to draw that fun stuff. But like the reality is, when you're drawing comics, it's not all action, it's not all spectacle, it's moments. It's you more often than not, 90% of the time you're drawing comics, you're drawing 2 people talking. And essentially what you're doing is, comics is about telling stories. It's not about the action, it's not about the spectacle, it's about telling stories. And you have to get people emotionally invested in the story you tell before you get to pay it off with the big kind of action scenes. And this is a comic I did for the school journals. So every school in New Zealand has my artwork in the system. And so this is a very simple kind of page, and I'll probably break it down a little bit after this too. But it's a simple page, 4-panel page, and again, it's about quiet moments. It's about building anticipation towards the payoff, which is the big action scenes. I kind of the way I kind of I guess how would you say it? Explain comic forms in terms of like the pacing, as you very much like a Quentin Tarantino film, where it's like talk, and then bang, 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 bang. Like you build the tension, you build the story through the character interactions, through the dialogue, through the characters, and then once you build that tension up, once you get you earn the right to do the big stuff, the big fights, the big action scenes, and all that stuff. So this is kind of the standard comic book page that you will find, which is like not necessarily nothing is happening, but it's quiet moments, it's building anticipation, it's creating the sense of story. Again, here's a example of 2 people talking, right? And one of the one of the challenges when you're drawing 2 people talking, especially in the visual form, is like, how do you make drawing 2 people talking look exciting? And that's part of the challenge. It's one of the things I really like as well, because this is just a standard conversation between two people, but I've used different shots, I've used, angles and stuff to kind of make it look visually appealing, even though on paper it would seem like it's a boring conversation. But making it visually appealing, with acting and set design and stuff, gives it a bit more appeal, gives it a bit more flavor, even in the quiet moments. And then one other thing that people often discount, because in their minds, again, they're thinking comics is about the blunderbuss, it's about the spectacle, it's about the exciting moments. What they forget is also an integral part of the art form is the lettering. And the lettering serves a purpose. It's not just an afterthought, and that's what happens with a lot of people. They think the lettering and the story, the words and stuff is an afterthought. Comics is the perfect marriage of visual, of pictures and words. They work harmoniously. There's a symbiotic relationship between the words and the pictures in comics. And when you think about the importance of the lettering, of the writing, of the story, you realize that with the comic, I guess, what would you call it? The comic techniques of using like speech balloons and whatnot allows you to turn it into a graphic design element. And what I've done with, like, this is just an example page, but you can see how every time I've drawn a panel, there's enough room for the speech balloons, for the writing and stuff. But the writing also adds a guide to the viewer. And so you can use speech balloons and the lettering to help guide the way the eye of your viewer. You can use it in a graphic design sense to guide the viewer's eye as they read the story. And so, like, let's go just to show you kind of a little bit behind the scenes. When I work in the process stuff, when I get the script, I read it a few times over just to kind of let it percolate. And as I'm reading it over and over, I start visualizing, like, how would I represent this panel and all that stuff. And so I start off on the left with very quick kind of layouts. And in the layouts, I actually make sure to leave space for the speech balloons and the lettering, because again, those are very, very important. And in doing so, when I blow up the layouts and the thumbnails, I'm able to draw the main art and still account for that lettering. And so for those of you who like to make comics and stuff, always leave room for your fucking lettering, because that is also an integral part of the comics that you make. And so you can see, how essentially the layouts and the thumbnails, that's the important part. For me, that's the important part, because I've figured out where everything goes before I make it look pretty. Everything else is just window dressing. The foundation, the structure is there first before I get to really drawing. And a lot of people that I've seen over and over again in my years, I've been drawing comics. I've been a published, pretty much all my life. I've been a published artist for like, 18 years now. And so over the years, I've seen so many artists make the mistake of A, not leaving enough room for lettering, and B, not figuring out how the comic is going to work. They just kind of draw it as it happens. And you have to be you have to be like super genius in order to be able to just draw draw a comic just without planning and stuff and still have it really dope as fuck, right? So you have to account for everything, the mood of your story, the characters you're drawing, the angles. Like, I look at making comics very similar to making film. In my mind, I'm scouring the scene, walking around, figuring out what's the best camera angle, what's the best shot for this moment, because each panel represents a moment. And I'll probably talk about that a little bit later as well. So that's kind of like behind the scenes, like how I work through this stuff and how I think about it before I even draw the good stuff, because again, in my mind, that's just window dressing. As long as I've got the structure down, I'm sweet. I don't give a fuck what it looks like. So yeah, this is an example of one of the exercises. I don't do this exercise as often as I'd like to, but when I was kind of like, in a rut, and I'd like to do some kind of warm up comics and stuff. One of the things that I like to do was actually take song lyrics and then turn them into comics, because song lyrics are quite interesting. They're quite poetic, and some are very quite literal. And so, or like, or have metaphors and stuff. And I always enjoyed the idea of taking like metaphors or similes and drawing them literally. And it kind of adds a bit of humor to something that may not be humorous. So for those of you who want to kind of practice your comic making skills without having to create a massive kind of lore and world building and characters and stuff, which takes a long time. If you just want to kind of get into the practice of making comics, try using song lyrics or even poems or nursery rhymes, fairy tales, to kind of get those storytelling comic muscles going. So yeah, so like in this one, this song is Break Even by The Script, an Irish pop rock band. And I always really enjoyed the visuals that the song gave me, so I just kind of decided to show that. And when a heart breaks, no, it don't break even. And of course, people would draw. Most people would usually draw like a iconic heart, but I decided for the fun of it to draw a literal anatomically correct heart, because I'm fucked up like that. But that's the beauty of that kind of thing. And you can see how I use the lyrics and the speech bubbles to kind of to again kind of guide the eye and also let people soak in the lyrics. I'm still alive, but I'm barely breathing, because I've got the ventilator, got the heartbeat, just praying to a god, got the hands that I don't believe in. Like it's that kind of thing. So yeah, so it's way like comics are way more nuanced than people realize, and so many people take it at face value, and it pisses me off, right? It pisses me off how people just think, oh, I'm just gonna make a comic, and not realize and understand the art form itself. And so yeah, because when the heart breaks, no, it don't break even. Again, allowing the lyrics to kind of breathe with the lettering and the box and the placement of the boxes, again, allows people to kind of soak it in and take in that time. I'll try to think if there's anything else after that. This is just I didn't do the coloring. I suck at coloring, but this is a tourism comic I did with one of the American writers who visited our country a few years ago, and he asked me to illustrate his adventures in Hobbiton and at the Waitomo Caves. But again, like this is like very much about establishing, a setting and kind of like, showing their experience and also the vastness of the Waitomo Caves and whatnot. And I think one of my favorite pages that I've ever illustrated is the second one, because, again, utilizing the length of the page to kind of create the sense of I guess length, like in how deep the cavern is, by using that side, that really long narrow panel, gives you a sense of scale, gives you a sense of how small humans are in that space. And then here with these panels in the middle, which kind of break up the last panel and the first panel on this page, kind of like the way I was thinking about it in terms of designing these panels, which again are focusing on the experience that my mate Ron, the writer, has. I kind of wanted it layered like it was a ladder, essentially. Like it's kind of done in a way where it feels like it's kind of segmented in a way that a ladder would kind of be like, because at the end he has to climb all the way back up. And again, using the negative space in terms of blackness, and just kind of this lone light source, just gives you again a sense of how far he has to climb, how deep the cavern is, but also how lonely and how kind of scary it would be to be in that moment. So I think that might be, yep, that's all the stuff that I had to show. So okay, sorry, I'm just having trouble with my camera. Yeah, so yeah, does that make sense? I don't know. I'm just winging it, really. I don't know exactly what people want me to do. Actually, let me just, okay. Double check. I'll just do. Yeah. So I'll do a little bit of breakdown. So that page that I showed earlier as an example of this comic page, this page is from Frogs. Again, this is one of my favorite pages that I've done because it's simple, because it's straight to the point. I guess it's just a very simple layout and design work and stuff. And like looking at this page, let me just go. Yeah, so looking at this page, I've got this extreme close-up of the main character's face, just because I wanted to kind of accentuate his feelings and his maybe the doubt that he's got. Like he realized, he looks down, he's like, oh crap, there's this obstacle in my way. And so there's space. See, there's space here for speech bubbles and text boxes and stuff. And so with those text boxes and stuff in the space, your eye will go from his face to reading the words. And then from there, the way I've designed the second panel, your eye automatically goes back to the left. And then by the time it gets here, with this horizontal image, your eye, and then you come back to the middle. And so that's how I've designed this page. Very simple, nothing too strenuous. It's just very easy on the eye to be able to follow. And that's the kind of mindset and you need to take into consideration when making comics, is that you've got to guide your reader. And the best the way I've realized over the years is that if, as a comic book artist, you put all this work into making sure that the audience and the reader doesn't even care about what they're reading, in terms of like, if the reader's experience is so damned easy, they don't necessarily care or take in all the artwork and all the work you've done to make that happen, then you're doing your job right. If the audience doesn't care about your art, you're doing your job right, because they're so encapsulated in they're so ensconced in the story you're telling, that they're in it. They're living that story, rather than sitting there looking at your art going, oh, that's really nice. And sometimes that could be a distraction from the story you're telling. So if you put in all the work that you can to make the audience not care about your art, you're usually doing a good job as a comic book artist. So yeah, so that's kind of a bit of I guess background, demystifying the comics. Again, if you guys have any questions and whatnot, definitely hit me up. I'll be happy to answer them. I guess now that I've kind of done a little thing, I might as well do a bit of an art demo. I have no idea what to draw. So let's see where this takes me. Oh, okay. So yeah, comics. It's just anything about comics that people want to ask me anything about comics, or or when I would just try and draw something. I don't know. I'm just trying to think. Let me check. I asked people on my Insta if they had any suggestions, but I don't think anyone answered it. Like, um, I asked for something easy because we don't have that long. And someone goes DC versus Marvel. I was like, I don't have 8 hours to draw something like that. So yeah, okay, let's go. Yeah, I must admit, it's a fairly lonely thing. Well, I think the arts in general is a fairly lonely pursuit. Um, but like when you're finding yourself as a proponent, as um, a practitioner of an art that no one else is really doing, like that's even more lonely. Like at least in the moana sense, like a lot of the other artists have contemporaries, have people that they can kind of um, talk about and share experiences. While like I'm here, I'm here on my own. I'm sharing my experiences to up and coming artists in order to help them navigate the space. But I don't have anyone like that really in my space. You know, a lot a lot of a lot of a lot of comic artists, particularly in Aotearoa, are white and male predominantly, but I'm seeing more and more kind of people, like particularly with the internet, making things so much easier. Um, so many more like creators coming out of the woodwork, which is amazing. Um, you know, um, so yeah, it's it's an interesting kind of field, and people love comics, but people just totally don't understand it. And like to be honest, like the misrepresentation and the misunderstanding of my comic art form, um, extends to art organizations and like Tautai, right? Love Tautai, but I noticed that in their in the kind of description of my session today, they called me an animator. I am not a fucking animator. Animation is a um totally different art form. There are similarities, but it's a totally different art form. Comics is not animation. Okay, so let me just clear that out as well. So even Tautai aren't immune to the misrepresentation and the misunderstanding of my art form. Okay, so yeah. And it's funny because I talk about how lonely it can be in the space, being in the space, and despite being like um, the premier moana comic artist in the South Pacific, right? Even I struggle, like being being a practitioner of this art form. Even I struggle for recognition from the establishment, I guess, for want of a better word, arts organizations, people who like love my work but don't want to acknowledge it or embrace it, or I don't know. It's such a yeah, it's such a lonely. Like I feel so lonely in this space, um, and um, that's the truth, really. Like it's pretty hard. It's pretty hard to be able to kind of gain recognition, um because what I do, people don't understand, um or those in charge don't understand. But like in saying that, I never let that shit get in the way. um I kind of like I pursuing this career is was a career that in the industry that doesn't necessarily have a defined pathway. Like you can't just go I'm gonna go to art school and I'm gonna be able to draw comics. Like that's not there's no kind of like A to B to C to success, right? It's kind of like you just do shit and hope for the best. And so trying to navigate that space, navigate this industry without much of a roadmap or anything, that builds a bit of kind of resiliency and a bit of I guess what would you say? A bit of gumption, a bit of ballsiness, because that's just how it. That's what you need really to kind of do this stuff to create a space for yourself. And uh, because of my work, like I've been very fortunate to do a lot of amazing work here at home and internationally. Um, I've illustrated comics for the WWE, I've done trading cards for Marvel and whatnot. Like, it's pretty much a dream come true because I get to do what I love and get paid fairly well for it. Um, and in doing so, like I've created a name for myself in terms of I've created that space. I've carved my space into those areas that never really embraced me, that never really acknowledged me. And now my work is at the point where it's like you can no longer ignore me, right? That's um and so and so yeah, so it's just kind of like, well, the people that um they kind of discredit what I do or don't really acknowledge it as well. They're the ones that look like dicks because I've created this status on my own. So yeah. Um I have no idea what I'm drawing. I'm just drawing big muscly dude because that's what people think comics are. Um I'm fairly loose in general. Like if I'm doing pencils or whatnot, um, I keep it fairly loose because most of the magic kind of happens um, in the inking stage. Um, I can tell he's tonguing by his hairdo. He's got the horse's tail. Um, Yeah. Do we have any questions or anything? Has anyone want to know more? Anyone want me to write more on any subjects? From the Jonah. Give him some eyelashes. I just felt like it. It's funny. I was just thinking about how a lot of moana men love the Hulk. I think the thing about the Hulk is that it's that real kind of, I guess, primal macho fantasy. I think that's why a lot of island guys like the Hulk. I like the Hulk, but not in that sense. Like I don't want to be super jacked and stuff, but like the Hulk is essentially um, you know, a rage monster. Um, which is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And so I always found it interesting that a lot of the characters that a lot of the Moana men particularly love is that male macho power fantasy. Um, yeah, and I've never bought uh, into the aspect of superheroics. I'm not about being stronger than everyone else or being, kind of dominant and powerful and stuff like that. Shit never really um, was my jam. Um, but I think part of that is also like the misunderstanding of the Hulk. They always think about the Hulk, but they never think about Bruce Banner. Like that's, they're caught up in that the superficialness of the look and the feel of Hulk as this super powerful rage monster, but they never look at um the the intellect of Bruce Banner, the fact that Bruce Banner came from a abusive had an abusive father, which is kind of what triggers that rageful side of him because he kept it suppressed. And I guess that could also be a bit of a commentary on male and male masculinity and in general, but also particularly with Moana men and how they like to kind of bottle up their feelings, and how there's those rage monsters lurking beneath. So yeah, it's it's an interesting. It's one of those things. Again, as someone that's been reading comics since I was a little kid, being in the comics industry as well, like I've noticed all these little bits and pieces. Um, so yeah, like people like some guys will see this and they'll absolutely love like, yeah, that's me. But like I'm drawing like a masculine dude, but I'm also like I'm gonna give him some eyelashes because you know uh, we're not masculinity is not a monolith. It's not this one thing. It could be various things. There's shades of gray to it. There's also the good side of it and the bad side of it as well. um but like in my mind, I'm just kind of yeah, I'm just kind of drawing something. Like I'm not. Um, yeah, if anyone wants to like check out some of the work I'm doing, or check out some of my work in general, you can find it's fairly easy to find information about me. You can either Google Sāmoan comic artist, or you can just Google Bloody Sāmoan, which is my moniker, my gaming tag, my social medias, all pretty much Bloody Sāmoan or Bloody Sāmoan art. BloodySamoan.com, that's my website. You'll find artwork and videos, interviews, blogs, all kinds of stuff on there. Yeah, like at the moment, I'm fairly busy. I'm working on my latest graphic novel for Headlocked. I'm also working on some TV stuff, uh, some stuff for film, and also working on some a big video game project, which I can't really talk about. But yeah, I'm a busy dude. Like, and it sucks. It sucks being kind of like in that space, essentially, like fairly on my own. There's not many. There's not many like when people hit me up, I'm like, sorry, I'm busy. There's not many people I can really kind of um I guess what would you say? Recommend, because depending on the project, there aren't people with the skill set at the moment to be able to do the work that I have to turn down. I know what. Let's add. Add some oil. Slathered in coconut oil. Go. I'm just doing silly stuff now. um, here we go. I have no idea what this is. I just kind of drew whatever came to mind. So, um, yeah. Uh, just save that somewhere. Yeah. I think yeah, that's right on time, I guess. Um, I don't know what happens now. Thank you for joining me, everyone. I guess thanks to I don't know if there's any questions. I couldn't check it because I can't really see anything on my end. But yeah, thank you, Tautai, for giving me this time and space to talk shit and share my art and hopefully educate people on the comics art form. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Those of you who did, who wanted to spend a very boring Thursday night listening to me talk shit. But yeah, again, you can find me on socials, bloodysamoan.com. That's my website, Bloody Samoan. That's my Twitter, Bloody Samoan Arts, my Instagram. Yeah, I don't know what else. Yeah, you'll be seeing more of my artwork anyway, through TV, film, and video games, as well as comics. Actually, yeah, just remembered. Sorry, let me just stop share. Yeah, and bilingual classes all around Aotearoa. Yeah, as an autobiographical comic that I wrote and illustrated about my life. Where is it? There we go. Yeah, available in Samoan and Tongan languages in schools around Aotearoa. So keep an eye out for that. And you get to read. Some of those kids get to read about me and my work through school journals. So yeah, that's me. Thank you very much. So fast before Toi Whai. Till next time, take care, be safe, especially if Omicron around. Yeah, and I'll catch you guys next time.